Where should I start?
This is such a weird conversation because I just had a client who she has had a death of a relationship
Mm,
in a sense within the last year, but she's also been trying to find a new job, and she's like, I applied like six jobs, I didn't get it. And what am I doing wrong was the
mm,
question.
mm.
And I was like, oh, that's such an interesting thought. And she's like, maybe I have unconfessed sin. And, she was going on and on and on
Yeah, that
about
that evangelical guilt tends to flare up in the back of the
that's what
mind.
literally, that's what I said. I was like, oh, that's so interesting because when Lou died, I remember like I had prayed, like for healing. I prayed for all of it. And then he died. And I was like, I
What did I
was
do
really
wrong?
specific.
Mm,
Right? I was so specific in my prayers. I was like, okay, don't just pray for healing because healing could mean that healing in heaven. I'm like healing here on earth. It's like being so
yeah,
specific, right?
right.
And then I went through scriptures, and like scriptures were like, talking about this, like unconfessed sin and all these little things that, you started maybe to investigate. And then I was like, I am not serving a God who is manipulating me.
Yeah, he doesn't play
If you
games.
pray it the right way, then I'm going to do it. If you don't, then I'm not going to do it. And I know that I've talked about like reconstructing,
Hmm.
I can say that, my faith because I started to see how shallow it really was.
Mm.
Meet my need and then I will worship you, right? But I wasn't actually saying that. But in my actions, most likely I was because everything was going great. I mean, not
Mm.
great, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there wasn't, death hadn't hit us. And I think that one of the things that I had said to her is that, in in our minds, we see like that God withholds things.
Mm.
Because she's like, why is God withholding this from me? And I was thinking, like God is not, never withholds anything from us. He might redirect it.
Mm.
But I don't believe that God's like, nope, you don't get that job. Nope, you don't get that relationship. I think God he's there, his in his wisdom, there's a bigger picture.
Right.
And we can't see it.
Which sucks.
And right. And that doesn't mean that we can't be hurt by it or we can't be like disappointed. Clearly, I was very disappointed and continue to be disappointed. But like we know too, as parents, um, love doesn't always mean yes.
Yeah.
And that really sucks. As
Yeah,
a
it does.
kid too, right? When your
Yeah.
kids ask for something and you're like,
No.
sorry, bubs,
Yeah.
it's going to be a no. They don't understand it.
Yeah, especially when you have the means, you're able to, but there's that this will not benefit them.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to recognize because you can't communicate that. You can't convince them. You can't reason your way to their understanding because
Yeah.
all they see and feel is the withholding.
Right.
And then comes the blame. You won't let me have, you won't get me.
But like, remember, I mean, if you kind of look at scripture, how many times do you see in Psalms, how long, Lord? Why, Lord?
Yeah.
Have you forgotten me? And I know I prayed that. Like, I don't understand. Like, did you just take your eyes off of us?
Mm,
I, as humans, we want to be seen, and I believe wholeheartedly, especially when we're looking at Instagram or TikTok, how many people want to be seen.
right.
But if we're not seen by God, like if we think he's not, his eyes must have been taken off of us.
Right. It's almost like because there's a pandemic of not being known, we'll settle for being seen.
Mm, mm,
It's akin to something that I wrote about was that I didn't feel like I was worthy of love, so I settled for acceptance. And to
mm.
get that, I changed anything about myself I needed to be accepted by anyone who would do it.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing of there's such a vacuum of being known, like truly known, because I think we're terrified of being truly known because we are convinced if we are known, we will 100% be rejected. So we will not be known, but we will settle for being seen. And we will do anything we need to ourselves, to our accounts, to our just to get eyeballs because we will settle for the attention because we're not worthy of the affection.
Yeah. It's really interesting that thinking we want to earn like blessings
Mm,
and, you know, we're so limited. What does the Bible say? Like he will do exceedingly more than you can even think or imagine. But the
right.
thing is that we have to actually let him do that.
Yeah.
you know, and I remember a coach years ago said, if you don't love your life right now, when you get to there,
Mm,
you will still feel discontent. And so it's like finding the place where you're at right now, because if this is all that we get and we're like, okay, this is it,
right.
and we're deciding this is not enough, right?
Right.
I think that the whole Christianese type talk has confused a lot of people,
Mm.
me included.
So people both within the faith and out of the faith?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one do you think's been more damaging to people that are in the faith
Yes.
or yeah, because there's like a set hope and expectation that fails them.
Yeah. And then when
Mm.
it happens, it derails them. And then they start questioning, is this even real?
Mm. Do you think that
Is
that's
this,
a necessary part of the journey in the relationship?
oh, 100%, 100%. Because I think looking at Psalms, you can see there's a lot of questioning. But by the end of David's lamenting, he comes to a place, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's almost
Where
like
it
the
does,
emptying. He
yeah.
empties
Hmm.
that grief, that sorrow, that confusion. It comes back to, man, you
Right.
have been consistent though. It's like it's it's almost like a like yeah, I know. Like yeah, you're right. Yes, you do love me. Yes, like there, but there's that emptying that needs to happen. Um,
I love that he was a verbal processor
yes, and
because
a really jacked up dude. And so it's
yeah,
like, yay, he's a verbal processor and a jacked up guy.
yeah, completely. Yeah, because, like, I think verbal processing, like, gets you to an end result, instead of it being like it's all in here and
Mm,
you're trying to figure it all out. And I always say, like, whatever's coming out of your mouth, your brain can only see that as truth.
mm,
So your brain is only designed to listen to what you tell it. So if whatever you're telling yourself, whatever you're saying, your brain's gonna, it's just gonna prove you right because it's part of you.
yeah.
But if you started to change the narrative, and even as a widow talking about, I thought this was really interesting. I heard someone say, you didn't lose your partner.
Mm.
Like they're not in the grocery store and you can't find them. They're actually dead.
Yeah.
And it was such like a whoa, yeah, because we say that, and that what happens then is that our brain is in this like it's trying to
Find.
yeah, it's searching, it's
Trying
in
to
this like
grasp.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, instead of the resolve is Lou died.
Mm.
And I can still be sad in that. Doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be sad. Doesn't mean you're not going to have, you know, um, confusion too, but you can kind of find a resolve of like, okay, what is it now?
Mm.
Who am I now? You mentioned, an appendage being torn off, like when people get married, the two become one flesh, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden your partner's gone and you are lost. You are lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're talking about any other grief, because I think grief, of course, my grief is different because I lost my partner, but I do think that grief exists and we don't know how to navigate through that. If we've lost a job, if we're not getting the thing that we want, if we don't have the partner that we should have, even in a marriage that might feel
Mm.
disconnected. So there's grief, and we don't know how. So what do? We numb ourselves
Right.
with television, with you know alcohol, with um, you know doing.
Right.
I was
Distract
saying I am
ourselves
really
with
good.
yeah.
I'm
Distract
good at
ourselves
doing.
with making busy schedules for kids.
Hmm.
Putting all of our focus and attention in the kids' lives. Lots of ways to distract and escape.
Right, but in the end, you don't look back at any of that. When Lou was dying, we never were like, we didn't talk about the things that we never, that we did and that was wrong and, all the things. We talked about love.
How was that a conscious decision that you guys made together, or did that just naturally happen?
Oh, naturally happened. Yeah, you don't
Really?
care about anything. You do not care about anything.
Is that because it is that because at that point the only like everything that's truly important just gets brought to the top and fully in focus of what is actually valuable, and all the secondary and tertiary things outside of that that normally take all of our time and attention and effort, everything suddenly becomes within alignment of reality.
Well, completely. And I think if I could tell anybody, and you've heard it. People
Hmm.
say, like when people are laying on their deathbed, they don't think about the $1 million they didn't make, right?
Right, right.
But you are aware, so much aware that time is limited.
Mm.
But as without that, we don't focus on time as limited. So we're like, I got to get that good job. I got to get this. I got to have the relationship. I've got to, instead of like looking at what you do have and work with that. Not saying that we shouldn't have dreams, because I still have dreams. I still
Hmm.
have things that I want to do in my life. Um, but I will say that I have a different viewpoint of it because I know that we do have limited time here.
I just want to sit with that for a sec. Is there a is it possible to have another catalyst other than death to find that alignment and to stay in it? Or is death just the strongest, most abrupt clarifier? Like, is there a way that we can set up for ourselves as someone to get our focus and priorities in order in a healthy way, obviously, without having to experience the the death of like we kind of talked about, the death of opportunity, the death of discipline, of a job, of a relationship, beyond just the physical, the emotional death of things.
Yeah.
You know, a I know there's going to be people who have terrible relationships with their kids. That's that's kind of like a mini death. And so
Mhm.
is there a way that we can either build up a resilience or properly align priorities so that when these things occur, they don't have a catastrophic effect in our minds, in our souls, in our lives? Or is it, it's going to be a catastrophic regardless of how prepared we are?
I think that's a choice. I think it's a choice because when you start becoming aware of your, like, oh, I am grieving something, whatever that is, you have a choice to see what is good, see what you desire. Scripture says that, a man without a dream will perish, right? So
Mm,
I believe that God wants us to dream and have, like, if he's a creator, he's created us in his image. We are creators,
okay. Yep.
right? So we get to partner in that. And I believe that what does happen is people do get to the end and go, ah, shoot, I wasted so much time. And it's funny because I was telling you, I'm writing this book and I'm looking back at how I was, and just like I think I've said this before, I am a human doer instead of a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because guess what? We're not supposed to be human doers. We're supposed to be
Right.
human beings.
Right.
Being in the presence of your own life, like looking and going, okay, because when I was looking back, I was like, ugh, I was not, I didn't handle things well. I thought that I had, because I wanted to do it right.
Mm,
And in the midst of it, I was judgmental. I, especially towards Lou, because he wasn't the perfect, godly leader,
right.
and I was so striving for that
Mm-hmm.
because the church really pushed that.
Right. Yeah, they painted a picture as to what the ideal godly man was. And they set a standard that Jesus himself probably couldn't even have met a lot of times. It's it's ridiculous. Did that now was that something that it was, because I know we talked about this last time, but I don't know if we specifically gotten to this question I'm about to ask, but was that because you wanted that for Lou or because you wanted that for you?
Oh, totally for me.
Mm,
I didn't know that though. I
mm.
thought I wanted it for us.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Like if we're to do, like, we're on the same page, then we're gonna soar and everything's gonna
Right.
be amazing. And then he wasn't, and so then it was like, well, get it together.
Mm.
Like,
Now
God
was
wants this for you. God wants that for you. Now, and I don't say that being encouraging is wrong,
right.
but encouraging as a nag, not so much.
Right. Because it wasn't necessarily you were wanting it for Lou so that he can experience that. It was, for lack of a better term, because maybe I don't have the correct vocabulary that really describes this, but it was more of a you trying to avoid your fear of whatever you were going to be missing, but Lou was the reason it was missing because he wasn't hitting the standard that needed to be hit for you guys together to hit that stride. And so it was he kind of became the unknowingly the the source of your fears defense. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Well, what's that term? He didn't understand the assignment.
Yeah, that's a much better way of saying it.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, I'm supposed to do what now?
Yeah, yeah. And he was like, I just want to have fun. Like, I don't know. I think the one most beautiful thing that I've ever learned from Lou is he would always say, he would actually catch people off guard, but he would say, every meal or every day is a holiday, every meal is a banquet.
Mm,
And we'd be in the grocery store and he would just say that and people would be like, they'd be like, how are you doing today? He's like, oh, every day's a holiday, every meal's a banquet. And that is kind of how he lived his life.
yeah,
The man loved his food
yeah.
and he was boisterous. I would say there were things in his life that really changed that, but it is in the back of my mind. I'm the kind of person like read the directions and follow them completely the right way.
Mm.
Don't go. What do you do? You can't have fun. Fun's not
You
part of
can't skip
this.
steps. Can't
Yeah,
skip steps.
exactly.
You can't
And
go
Lou
out
is a
of
big
order.
skipper stepper. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So then what then brought that back into alignment in a healthy way? Was it was it something that Lou did or something that was done in you? Like did something happen in you that you recognized that and you kind of like, oh, let him I am not the one who saves Lou. I'm not the one who speaks to Lou's heart. I'm not the one who is the creator of his soul, and I need to let him figure this element out on his own, or what? How did that work out? Because we got into that again a little bit our last conversation, but this is kind of taking a more specific and different direction. What happened within that?
Well, I will say I have been in and out of it. Like I would be, okay, you're right. You have to live your life the way you have to live it. And not that he would even say anything. He was just the most easiest, you know, guy. I think it's more, I was the, like, we need to, so we can have this, do this and then we can
Mm,
have that. And I didn't realize that I had been grieving for years before this death. And so just seeing like how I wanted a certain lifestyle and then that lifestyle didn't happen
mm,
the way that I wanted, and also got ripped away too. So we did have a certain lifestyle, but then that got ripped away.
right.
Um, yeah, I think I've just been in and out of it. And then after Lou died, really, well, while he was dying, um, there was such a beautiful part of all of it, even though it was horrifically awful. Just our connection, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you really realize when you've truly loved somebody when you are walking them to heaven.
Mm,
Like, and yeah, none of that, hey, you didn't attain anything that I thought you should have, or if you would have just done this, none of that came
right.
up.
Right.
Yeah. It was more like looking at me like, ugh, oh man, I still got so much work to do.
What yeah, I think that's a key thing because that's really curious to me that prior to the cancer diagnosis and it coming back and all that stuff, you were already grieving the the imagined expectation that never came true. I think that is a very familiar feeling to many people. They have an idea as to it will be like this, or it will be like it'll work out this way, and they can have that confidence of it, or they can even have the hope of I hope it works this way. I hope it ends up being like this or being like that. And in either scenario, when that fails to become reality, and that's kind of what we're talking about, is those moments. That's a the death of failed expectations. I think is something that people don't often recognize is something that needs to be grieved and mourned as well, because it doesn't hit the same way. Or it's there's the internal embarrassment of external mockery for
Mm.
feeling that way of really and that's kind of one of the things I've recognized over the past couple of years is like I'm a very emotional dude.
Mm.
Never thought I was. I thought I was a very analytical, data driven person of like here's the facts, here's what it is. And I think really that's because I wanted to hide the emotion. I wanted to hide the
Mhm.
feelings. I wanted to not be vulnerable. And I don't know if it was a fear of mocking, a fear of. I think it kind of comes back to what was said earlier is I was afraid to be known and be rejected for what was found.
Mm.
And I think that's a pretty common human experience.
Heck yeah.
That
I mean, we all wear masks, right?
so in the when the cancer came back in Lou and you guys were going through that process and everything, is that was that the moment that the masks for both of you fully came off, or did it happen before that, or did you guys have like little moments in your marriage where
Oh yeah.
you were
Yeah.
able to see each other maskless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that was one of the catalysts for me because I knew my husband. Like I knew what um was really going on. And he had a lot of shame and regret.
Right.
And he was in his head and he was also denying that he needed help or to talk to
Mm,
somebody. And so he kept it all in.
mm,
And like I said before, to me, it's not a coincidence that his cancer started up here.
right.
So, yeah, but I mean, yeah, had many moments where we would, intimate moments of just being like real,
Mm,
um, you know, and I regret that I didn't understand shame as much as I do now. Um, because I was just kind of like, fix it. Like, let's go. You know, do this and you do that. And just like I think my daughter had said, you are that kind of person where you're just like, do it.
right.
Like,
It
okay,
needs to
now
get
what?
done. Do it.
Hmm.
Right.
And that's not that way for everybody.
Right.
And
And there's a
realizing that
difference. And there's a difference between how women wear shame and how men wear shame. There's
completely.
there's a difference.
Hmm.
I think you're right. I think there's something naturally innate in women where they tend to have an active shame,
Mm, yeah.
where that's where they go into fix it mode.
Hmm.
Whereas men, in shame, they go into shutdown mode. Everything
Mm-hmm.
else is fix it mode. But when there's
Mm-hmm.
internal shame, it's shut down. If there's shame in someone else, they can fix it. Shame in self, shut it down, can't do it, incapable, this is bigger than me. All those things. And was that kind of your impression, or maybe it came out in those moments of what was kind of in Lou's head, is that he was wearing shame in like a traditional masculine sense of just this is like a weight instead of a motivator.
Right. And I think your identity of I'm a Marine, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Green Beret, I'm a second lieutenant in the Army. Um, how could I have gotten to this place, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and so that shame hung with him because his identity was shifted.
Mm.
Where like I'm such an open book, and I'm like I'm a screw up, and I do this wrong and that wrong,
Yeah.
and and not that he didn't ever say that, but again, going back to every day's a holiday, every meal's a banquet,
Mm-hmm.
that statement was like that's what I want to believe.
So it wasn't even so that was kind of like wishful thinking. He That was kind of like a speak into existence type of
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
for Lou.
Positive self-talk. He didn't
Yeah.
realize that. I mean, it was very good.
Right.
Um,
And there
uh,
was moments because that's kind of how I remember Lou as well, is like boisterous, loving life. He would nerd out and get excited about coffee because the times that I met up with him when you guys were still local to us, meet up with him and talk to him, the nerding out of and the excitement he had just over something as simple as coffee, but that
oh
was
yeah,
applied to everything. When you were recording, like I remember him nerding out in the entire process and being so excited about the every detail was exciting to him. And
exactly.
that's how he was. But it also makes sense that if you have that internal weight of shame, that almost becomes your means of distracting yourself from it.
Mm-hmm.
Is you go hard in the opposite direction of you know everything. A level 1 experience is actually a level 10 experience because you don't accept the level 1 experience.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, he definitely loved level 10 experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But he taught me a lot about that too. So there's, I think we're so critical about ourselves as
Yeah.
humans. And if I was, just to really bring to light, like we have amazing qualities. And then there are things that we just, if we're aware of them, those are the things that we're like, oof, like, but what shines much more brighter is the things that we are holding and saying, like, this is, ugh, I don't like this part of me.
Mm,
And I do think social media, it's made it 10 times worse for your generation.
yeah.
Not just like, because we didn't have social media
Right.
when all life was happening for us. And now, you're just like scrolling and, you're seeing
Yeah.
illusions of things that are not real, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
part of
I
the
use
reason why I've
social
been
media.
off for
Would you say
for
that?
I said that's part of the reason I've been off, or way less consistent. It's just because I go on there and like I want to post and ghost, like I
Hmm.
so badly want to, but then it just sucks you in and you start doom scrolling and then you're like, and then by the end, I mean I even have it set up on my phone so whatever the iPhone thing is where it like the time limits on stuff. So
Yeah.
that way it reminds me like, hey, dude, like you've been scrolling for 20 minutes on this thing. And I'm like, ignore for another 20 minutes. Like, and I keep scrolling. Um, and And I'm like, why? Like, why does it suck you in? And because then you're right. The only thing it makes you feel is like, dude, I'm not doing enough. And what I am doing is not to the not to the quality it needs to be. So it's that constant comparison of like, you're not doing enough. You're not good enough. You will never be enough to XYZ break out, get the audience, get the eyeballs, get the likes, get the whatever it is you're trying to do. It's just the constant not good enough reinforcer.
Definitely. And isn't it interesting? There's a whole side note, but that we really want people to know what we're doing every single moment of every
It is
day.
kind of weird. It is weird.
You know?
It
It's
used
like,
to
and
be
I'm
like,
walking on my porch, and
yeah,
like, who gives a flying
it's
fart?
hilarious because Danny will pull up. She'll get like Facebook reminders of past when she had a Twitter and is attached to her Facebook, and she'll get her like, oh, on this day, this is what you posted, and she'll be like, walking to class. She's like, why did I feel like that was important to let everybody know? Like, it's just like the things
Hmm.
that we thought were so valuable to let our friends know. It's just, it was so silly.
Yeah, exactly. And I
And
think
now
that
it's
is
not,
what
yeah,
distraction,
yeah,
you know, like I think going back to like why we're, you know, maybe not seeing results or we're not getting the thing that we desire is because we are distracting ourselves,
right.
and because the thing that we might be striving for in our brain, we're like, oh, that's for somebody else. That cannot be for me.
Mm,
Um, and so we talk ourselves out of it, you know. And I think when Lou died, the only reason I started documenting grief really was cathartic, and because I'm a
mm,
singer and I love being creative, I was like, ooh, video, this is cool. And I can like talk about grief because I don't think people understand grief
right.
and how it affects you, how it affects your brain, how it affects your body. For me, I have a bit of PTSD, so I'm still struggling with certain things that, I'm working through. But I just was like, I really want to talk about grief. And some people would be like, oh, wow. I mean, all right,
Yeah.
it's been a year. You done with that yet?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like
Yeah.
people are just like, oh, I started this women's grief group online, and it's just lovely, these lovely ladies. And one of the ladies said that she was in the room with four or five other women who are married. Her husband is dead.
Okay.
And she's like, everybody's talking and they're all talking about their husbands and like, if only you would do this or that. And she said, I wanted to say, at least you have your husband, right?
Yeah.
And she goes, but I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I didn't want to spoil the mood. And I said to her, I go, isn't it interesting that we don't want to make other people uncomfortable in our grief? It's
Mm,
like, sorry, that makes you uncomfortable.
right. Right.
You know.
So what did grief actually feel like? And was it different than what you were prepared for?
I mean, when someone dies, a part of you does because your whatever you had planned is no longer. I was even thinking, my kids, we all live together, and they have plans.
Mm,
Even like just today, they have plans for their partners, they have plans for their kids, and I don't.
mm,
Right? So I don't, and someone was saying, well, you should, go get friends. And it's like, it's different.
yeah.
Like you can have friends, but a partner, it's different, you know. That's somebody who knew you intimately, who knew you better than you knew yourself, really.
Hmm.
And that's why I do think like Lou was such a blessing, to me because he did know me and he was also very encouraging. He was my biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
He accepted me with all my nagging. And, even the fact I was thinking about this the other day that Lou said, I'm going to miss you the most. And I thought, that's so interesting. I wonder up in heaven if they miss us. You know, I wonder what that's like. And then I also thought this was really interesting. Just was thinking as I was writing in my upcoming book that I'm working on, that I thought it was interesting that Lou would go before me. Because to be honest with you, I always thought it was going to be me because I see a spot and go, cancer,
Yeah.
liver, heart. And Lou was like, woo, yeah. And so I find it really kind of interesting. Like, did he go before me? Was there the plan so that when I got there, he would be there waiting for me
Hmm.
and I wouldn't be alone? I love that visual.
That checks out with Lou.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
Oh, life.
Yeah.
We spend so much time trying to figure it out and trying to figure out God. And I think, you know, going back to like finding joy in the place where you're at. And even for me as a widow, like, okay, finding joy where I'm at instead of busying myself, because I'm very good at that even now. That I think that's just a PTSD response
Hmm.
of just like, okay, I'm going to wash the dishes and I'm going to do the laundry and I'm going to, because avoid the pain. So when you're grieving, even if you haven't lost somebody, you do that as well. Nobody
So,
likes pain.
so is the thing that helps. Well, I'll ask this question and then I'll ask another one. Is the thing that helps the grieving process is to sit in the uncomfortability of the pain? And how has your grief evolved from Lou's passing to present?
You can't avoid the pain. I think that was one of the reasons why I started documenting it because I wanted to understand it. I still don't understand it. I don't
Right.
understand. Yeah, I just, but I have felt it, and I've allowed myself to feel it, and allowed myself to be like, oh, today is a day where I'm gonna just lay down and take
Mm.
a nap.
And can you feel that in your body? Or that, like, you feel
Yes,
like you need that?
I
Or
completely.
w-
Hmm.
and was there a time, or has there been times when you're like, you try to push through it because you don't want to sit in it, you want to distract, you want to avoid, or do you just accept this is what it is right now? Now, is that a switch that got flipped, or is that kind of how you've been before, prior to this? Were you always able to recognize, oh, this is what needs to happen,
No.
accept it, don't avoid it? So
Yeah. No.
a flip or a switch got flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because I literally was like I say, I mean, I still have the human doing part of me
Hmm.
that's still working itself out, but I definitely, I'm like, if I need to isolate and just come upstairs and shut the door, I will just do it. You know, it's really difficult to explain your emotions to someone when you don't even understand your own emotions. And so I would say what the evolution of grief in the beginning, it's like poison grief. It's like it hurts so bad and it makes you feel like you're losing your mind because you have grief brain and you're forgetting things and you're just so lost in it. And as time goes on, you, you start to feel like it's a scratchy sweater.
Mm.
You know, it's like, ugh, but you can't get it off. And you're just like, ugh, I don't like it. But you know, you're still going through it. And then at some point, it starts to become softer.
Mm.
Um, and it's more loving, and it becomes part of you. And I don't know, did I ever tell you the story about the river, about Lou almost drowning in the river?
No.
I really think this is a bit of a analogy for grief for me. We live by a very big river here. It's in Oregon, and Chad had said, "Hey, I'm going to take you guys. We're going to go on a kayaking," and so everybody had their own kayak, and I was like, oh, I don't know, you know, and everyone was like, oh, it's family friendly, mom, I'm totally fine. And okay, so we're, you know, on the river and we're paddling and it's beautiful. I mean,
Mhm.
it's huge, the river. And you can like look and you see otters and you see cranes and it's just gorgeous and the trees is beautiful. But you're going to hit a rapid.
Mm.
And so as we're going, there's like one little rapid, and I'm like, oh God, okay, I got through it, you know, and then go through. Now you get through, and it's peaceful and it's beautiful, and you're just you can go to the side, and we can all talk, and it's just calm, and the water is great. And then you start again, and you keep going, and up there's another rapid, and you got to go through the rapid, and this one's a little bit bigger.
Mm.
And so we're doing that, we're traveling, and each time we got through, there'd be that beautiful peace. But then there was this rapid and
Mm.
it was bigger. And I was like, Chad, that one looks a little big. And he just goes, Mom, follow Bethany. That's his girlfriend. He goes, and stay in the V. And I'm like, I don't know what he's saying, but okay. And so I'm just like, follow, follow, follow. I get through and I'm like, whoa, I got through. Right when I got through, I noticed there's an oar. I noticed there's like some cans. Um, and I was like, but people were paddling towards me, who we were in the group with. And I was like, I got through it. Like, what's everybody paddling to me? And they're like, go to the side. And so I go to the side. I'm like, what is going on? Well, in the meantime, Lou, instead of following the V, he was so focused on me getting through that he hit a rapid
Mm.
and he went under. He didn't have a
Oh
life
man.
vest.
Oh.
That's a whole nother
Yeah.
analogy there, but he didn't have his life vest on. And he was going under. And he said that he would hit the bottom and then he would push himself up, but the wave, the rapid would take him back down. He said, I
Mm.
literally thought I was going to die.
Mm.
And he was able to get out of it. Um, but I always think about that because that's kind of what grief's like.
Mm.
Grief's like, but if you take your eye off of it and you're like, I'm not going to focus on this rapid, it's going to take you under.
Mm.
But if you can focus on it and be like, okay, I'm going to get through this. Because it's interesting if you think about when you're on the river, the peaceful time is actually longer than the rapids.
Yeah.
The rapids, unless you're like on the Colorado River and you're like going through like,
Right. 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 Right.
I wasn't doing that. But typically, if you're just doing a, you know, lazy river, you know, the peaceful time is longer. and the
Mm,
rapids are
mm,
shorter. And
mm.
so I feel like that is such a visual for me in grief.
A friend of mine, several years ago, when I was having massive panic attacks, he used a surfing analogy with me because he knew I'd understand it. He goes, a panic attack. He goes, the more you try to control it and the more you fight it, the longer it's going to hold you down. The longer it's
Mm,
going to hold you under. And he goes, you know, because you've surfed in big waves, that the thing that will speed up the release is to relax and allow it.
mm.
If you try to fight the panic attack, it's going to make it worse and make it go longer. And is that kind of a similar sensation within when grief really spikes? When you get hit with it, because like you said last time, like you sometimes there's no rhyme or reason that you can pin down to as it hits, when it hits, as hard as it hits. Something in your body or your mind or your soul is just like now, and you're like, oh. And if you try to fight it, you try to avoid it, it's almost like that makes it worse. But the sooner you can say, okay, I need to sit in it, I need to sit fully with it, it's still going to hold you under. But as you relax into it and allow it and flow with it, it's going to let you up faster. Is that kind of a similar experience within the grieving process?
I don't know if it has to hold you under.
Okay.
I think that if you navigate yourself with it and allow it to be part of you instead of against you. Because,
Mm,
if you think about it, when you're on the river, it's not that the rapids are trying to be against you. They're not trying to get you under,
right.
right? It's not
They're still trying to bring you to the next
they're
thing.
trying to bring you to the next peaceful
Mm.
place.
Oh,
Um, and so I think that being aware of that, yeah, you do have to go through it. It's not going to take you under unless you let it. And that's why, when I said the life vest thing, if Lou had a vest, he would have been
right,
fine. He just
right,
floated right through, but he didn't. He didn't have his
right.
life vest on. And, maybe for us, the life vest that we can cling to is that, okay, if I just keep following, keep going, keep living, grief is going to get me through. Instead of grief, because I think in the beginning you feel like it's your enemy,
Mm.
you know, like it came to destroy you.
At the beginning, it feels like a wave trying to hold you down, when
Yes.
in reality, you're on a river
Yep.
and it's just bringing you to the next peaceful point.
Yep.
And I think that's such a. I think that's why I've. I think that's why I've feared. I won't even say feared grief. I've avoided grief. I've avoided mourning. I've avoided and not just grief. Many of the emotions that I feel like maybe I've avoided is because the I'm using the wrong framework. I'm thinking of them as a wave that can that's either going to hold me down or can be ridden.
Yeah.
And I love so much more that visual of a river that's going to have moments of rapids. You're still going down river. You're still going to get to the next the next peaceful lazy part of the river. You're still going to get to the next campsite. You're still going to get to the next whatever it might be. But there's going to be occasional rapids.
And that's where you really need to focus.
Mm.
Just like Chad said, follow Bethany, follow the V. And
Hmm.
my focus was so like, okay, even in my fear.
Yeah,
And
like
I had a
I'm
lot of
not
fear.
sure. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but this is what you told me to do.
I'm just doing it, follow the V.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how? So knowing what you know now, what ways are you preparing yourself for when those rapids come up, and in what way are you helping your clients in those rapid moments to be able to follow the V, stay in the kayak or stay in the boat, stay in the raft, prepare them to not only survive the rapid, but maybe find a little bit of enjoyment in it. What have you found that's helped you, or helped the people that you work with?
I mean, I think being aware that you're going to have them is key. Like it's not always going to be smooth sailing, but
Mm,
when you get to the clearing, that's when there is more clarity. That's where there is more like, oh, okay, I got through that.
mm,
And every time, and like I said in the beginning, the first rapid was really small. The second rapid was bigger. Third rapid, bigger. Fourth
right,
one was ginormous, right?
right.
So I think that's life. You're going to hit little rapids. And as a kid, when you're going through all of that, so you start young, so we're talking about life, right? And you're like,
Hmm.
that first rapid, if you're a kid or you're a young person, you're like,
Oh,
that rapid was huge,
yeah, yeah,
right? But they also may think like fun and like there's,
right.
I think there are two ways to look at it.
Mm,
I am not an adventurous person. So that was terrifying. But for anybody else, it's just like exhilarating,
right.
to do that. Like you're surfing. I'd never do that because I'm afraid of sharks. So um, it, I, I think this is just me spitballing here, but I think there are two types of people. One that sees the shark and the other that sees the beauty of the wave unfolding.
Mm,
And I think we can coexist, like we can both be like, I can see that there's a beautiful wave unfolding, but I also can see the danger in it. And
right.
so focusing on it
And
and
would it even maybe be we see the wave because we can actually see the wave. We see the possibility of the shark. We don't know the shark's there. We don't know the shark's not
right,
there.
right,
There's the possibility that it's there. And that
right.
fear of possibility is sometimes more terrifying than the beauty of the wave.
Yes, yeah. I think that's what keeps people from living.
And enjoying the ride.
Hmm. Because there's always a possibility. And yeah, there is. There always is a possibility.
Right.
I think that's the beauty of having Lou as my partner for so long is he saw the beauty of the wave.
He
He
always lived
never
in possibility.
yeah, yeah. And I've
In
always
the
been the
positive possibility.
yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
So then what would you say for, because I don't want to make a judgment call on on the scale of grief, because I'm sure, like you know and have experienced, grief does not discriminate.
Nope.
Some, it's like there's that saying, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. You
Mm.
know, if we get in that comparative game of, well, their worst is worse than my worst, like I don't want to make that judgment call as to, because I look at it as grief is grief. There's going to be a spectrum of intensity and duration, all those things. But if someone's finding themselves anywhere on that grief spectrum, what would you what would you say generally is the most important thing for them to focus on while they're in the rapid? And it could be a handful of things, whatever comes to mind for yourself or what
I
you've worked
think
with other people.
I think the first thing I would say is be really kind to yourself.
Like
When you're
forgiving,
grieving,
loving,
yeah,
what in what way?
I think that we're very judgmental. Like we should be further along, or why are you still in this place? Or you should, like I'm not grieving like that person did, like I should, do it this way. And
Mm,
and so I would say be really kind to yourself. There's no judgment, of how you do it. There's no
Mm.
manual of how you do it. I remember when Lou first passed away, I knew other people who had lost their spouses and they told their story. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I remember going to my kids and going, am I not grieving the right way? Like, isn't
Mm.
that interesting?
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
like my kids said, we would have thought you were broken if you were in your bed for 6 months, like,
Right.
and again, that's just the way I did it.
Right.
I just got picked up and just started moving. And when I was deeply sorrowful, I did what I needed to do. If that meant crying and, talking about it, I talk about Lou all the time. I think that's my way of grieving too.
Mm.
But that would be my first thing is just be super, super gentle with yourself, no matter what you're grieving. If you're grieving a loss of a job or you're grieving a loss of an opportunity, it's like be kind to you. It's not you. Just like my my friend had said, like what am I doing wrong? I'm like, God is not a transactional God.
Right.
If you do this, I give you this. You know, there are things that in his wisdom we don't understand and will never understand. I'm not happy about that.
Right. Yeah.
But you
That.
can have a resolve of it too.
Yeah. That reminds me because a few months ago I was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, and the the time in our marriage. I don't know if you know this, and I'm trying to work up the courage to ask Danny to for her to sit with me and us talk about us. Um, it's one of those things like I know she'll say yes, but there's always that like I don't know. It's my wife. Maybe she'll,
Yeah.
because she's
One
so
person who
awesome.
knows me most.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. She'll air all my dirty laundry, which I do a good enough job on my own. But the season of our life that came flooding into my mind was I was dealing with massive depression and panic attacks. We're living with my in-laws, and we had a miscarriage. And I remember, I'm like, I remember laying there going like, why is this coming up? And the thing that popped in my head was, this was the one good thing. This kid was the one thing I was excited about in that season. It was the
Mm,
one good thing
mm,
that I had to look forward to. I couldn't work. I felt like a failure of a man and a husband as a dad because we were living with my in-laws. All the different emotions and feelings and stuff that's going to surround that situation. The one good thing, we had a baby coming and we had a
mm,
miscarriage. And I relived everything,
mm,
every feeling, every disappointment. I held my son in my hand, and I remember sitting and laying in bed. And I went to bed before Danny, so I'm weeping in bed.
mm,
Uh, I remember reliving that, saying, like, man, that really sucked. Like, that was, why did you take it? And the spirit hit me with something that I was like, oh, I think I now understand God's love.
mm.
And the thing that hit me was, without Noah, there'd be no Gemma. And that's one of those things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And out of the pain we are inevitably, the pain we're inevitably going to experience at some point, that's how the love of the Father works. Without the experience and the pain of Noah, there would never have been her beautiful baby girl.
Yeah.
And I wish there was a way to get the thing that we wouldn't be able to get any other way without going through that thing.
Mm.
I wish that there was I wish that there was blessing and joy without rapid.
I think I always come back to this, is that Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was actually praying to not have to go to
Right.
what he did. So I don't, I think that we, if we really are kind to ourselves, it's okay for us to be like, hey, I didn't like that. I don't want that. I want this.
Mm.
Um, I feel like, if God's heart is, it doesn't like shift to judgment on us when we fall short or when we feel grief. God's with us and his compassion is great.
Mm.
And so like you're looking at this beauty of, your daughter being born. Something was taken and something is given.
I think that's a very. I remember the thing like, oh, I think I finally understand how his love works.
Hmm.
That when something is lost, when something goes missing, when something is taken, something grows, something is given, something is provided. Um, but it's really, it's hard to remember the faithfulness when you're terrified you're going to get thrown out of the boat.
Yep.
So then what? So then, other than being kind and patient with ourselves, what's another thing that we can do to allow grief to have its place, to not fight it, but to, because I love what you said, what you're saying today. It's also what you said the last conversation we had. It was some along the lines of what you said last time was oh, forgive me because I'm forgetting exactly how you worded it, but I remember it was so beautiful that like it's almost like you don't get over it. It just becomes like
Oh
you
yeah. You go with it.
yeah.
If you realize that it's a journey, because I think a lot of people think like when I get to the other side of this, and it's interesting. I heard Billy Bob Thornton.
Hmm.
I saw a thing on him, and he was talking about his brother, and he said that his brother passed away, died when they were younger, and he said he's never ex- he's what did he say? I've never felt happiness the same since.
Hmm.
And I thought that was so interesting. A part of me was like, oof,
Yeah.
that's heavy. Um, he also said that he was a melancholy spirit, that ever since then. And I think that if we realize that it's a journey and we're not so like quick to get through it,
Hmm.
and yet we're gonna, like lose with me. Like this grief is with me now. It's part of me. It's embedded in me. It's embedded in my children. It's embedded in my grandson. It's because if you get through it, then you forget it, right? You're
Hmm.
like, you know, it is part of you. I think it does soften.
Hmm.
I don't want to be a sad Sally.
Right.
I'm going to have sad moments. Typically, I think what I love now is that when a song is played and I'm like, oh, Lila, that was our song. Or, oh,
Hmm.
that was, yeah, that brings me back to a time. I can now go like, we had a good life.
Mm.
And even like I said earlier, I judged myself way early on in the relationship. I was in it, and we were married for quite a long time. And, I think that we as partners, you know, we can be really judgmental. I I think now it's like when I hear stuff and I see lose pictures and I can feel sadness, but I can also feel such joy because,
Mm.
like he loved me well and I was lucky to have that.
So over time, the grief. I like how you said with originally with the sweater is this like this scratchy wool sweater that eventually softens. It kind of wears. It kind of wears in and then becomes soft and then it becomes almost cozy.
Yeah, like
And
a
so
cashmere.
yeah, yeah. So then over time, grief over time will lose the pokiness, the scratchiness, and instead of it being the sorrow of missing, it it changes into a gratitude for what was.
Yeah.
Even
And
though you,
I
even though
also
you're gonna
think
have those moments
exactly.
of missing, it's again it kind of goes into the joy and sorrow are held together.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, you that's life.
Yeah, I wish it wasn't.
Me too.
I just want joy.
Preach it, brother, preach it. But we wouldn't know joy if we didn't have sorrow.
I know. I freaking hate that saying. Like I
Me
hate that
too.
like oh you wouldn't know, this without like it's true. And
Hmm.
it kind of goes to like what I just said like there would be no Gemma there without Noah there'd be no Gemma. It's the same thing just a different noun.
Yeah.
Different and instead of using adjective I'm using a noun. It's the same thing but it doesn't make it any less true. It's just kind of like what we said in our first conversation. It's like those coffee cup verses that don't help in the moment.
Oh God. Yeah.
Like
I could
in
have
the
throw punched
throes,
many a person.
so many people, and there's probably a couple of them that you should probably still show up on their doorstep and still throw punch them today. Because sometimes people mean well and sometimes people don't. They're just trying to avoid their own shit.
Hmm.
And but it's yeah those things in the moment don't help, but it doesn't make them any less true. The okay, so we've
I
got
think
go ahead.
if you've experienced grief, I think we can look at those sayings differently,
Yeah.
right? So you can see, like, oh man, like I got to love this man. I can say that, but if you said that to me, or someone else said, like, well, at least you got 38 years with him, I'd be like, mm-hmm,
Yeah. There's gonna be a
mm-hmm,
bunch of middle fingers being thrown around.
mm-hmm. Yes. Um, there are things that we can work out on our own. And I would say
Mm.
this, if you are someone who has never experienced grief, be very aware of what you say. Just be aware
To someone who is grieving.
to someone who is grieving.
Mm.
Just be aware. Also, just the best thing you can ever say to someone who's grieving is, I'm here for you.
Right.
I'm with
That
you.
that was one of a buddy of mine that I've done some a buddy of mine Mike. He does all kinds of like uh, coaching things and whatnot. And one of the things I did with him, it was shoot I can't remember the name of the course thing that I was doing with him. But basically, what he says, exactly along those lines, he goes, the best thing you can say when someone is, whether it's grief or some other heightened and not like one of those like rapid emotions, because we have those those emotions we experience in the calm, and we have those emotions that we experience in rapids. And sometimes it's anger, fear, grief, like it's those rapids emotions. The best thing you need to say to someone is, I love you and you're in my heart. Because that just provides that temporary anchor of being loved and anchoring them in where they are at. Because I think that's probably the biggest thing in dealing with grief is, by all means necessary, everything in us wants to squirm out from under it and get to the end state. We want to get through the rapids as quickly as possible.
Yep.
But what that's going to make sure happens is that the rapid downstream is probably going to be a little bit more intense. And so if we can allow ourselves to anchor in the chaos, to sit with
Mm.
it, to not be judgmental of ourselves of how we're handling it or how bad we're handling it, and to fully experience. I love how scripture says it. I can't remember where exactly it's at, but it's something along the lines of, take it full in the face. Is I think how the message it describes it. It might be in Lamentation somewhere. I can't recall, so forgive me. But that's basically what it says. It's like, hey, don't run from it. Take it full in the face. Just squint your eyes and just take the punch. Don't try to slip it. Don't try to roll with it. Just because if you keep trying to not allow it, kind of go along that other words, if you keep trying to get away from allowing it to finish its work, it's never going to be complete. And so in those moments where everything in us wants to squirm out from that uncomfortable,
Mm.
terrifying, weighted pressure, how can we anchor ourselves to fully feel and not be squished in the process?
Well, I mean, I really believe that being really aware of how you are, what you're feeling,
Hmm.
and being okay with that. Like how many times do we say when we're crying, sorry, but I'm not really sorry, but we're conditioned
Right. To be
to
apologetic
not
for how
make
we're
you
making them
feel
feel.
uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm crying. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Although my husband died, so just gonna say I don't think I want to be sorry about that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
So I
that's
do
funny
think,
how we're conditioned like that. That we
yeah,
we accept fault for something that we aren't guilty of.
yeah, exactly. And it's a normal thing.
Yeah.
Like, it would be kind of weird if you didn't cry.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I'd be like, whoa, really holds his emotions quite well. Yeah.
So
Versus like, oh,
yeah.
I'm with you.
So what has helped you understand and feel those emotions, and has that changed over time, or has it been pretty consistent for you?
I'm a pretty emotional person, so
Okay. So then
yeah.
what have you always been able to tangibly understand those emotions, or has that changed with the grief? And what has helped you tangibly hold and understand the way you're feeling? Are you a journaler? Are you a verbal processor? Do you have a counselor, therapist, spiritual director, or anything like that that helps you process stuff? What have you found has been valuable in your process?
Well, for me, obviously, posting reels on social media and writing. So yes, writing, journaling.
Hmm.
I will see something like I remember when Lou first, I think it was the summertime, and I was cutting the lawn, and it's a pretty big lawn, and I was pissed. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to videotape this. So I videotaped it and I was just mad. I was like mad at God. I was mad at everything. I was like, it's hot. And I was like, mm, and I kind of like was thinking in my head, I'm like, this is kind of what I feel like.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take that video and then write something in it. And it resonated with a lot of people. And what I've noticed is that that's what's happened. People are resonating with it. That's why I started the Grief and Me group. Because I was kind of like, I don't want to go into a grief support group. I
Mm.
don't want to walk into the church as the widow. It took me a long time to go back to church because I knew I was walking in as a widow, and that I didn't, I was mad that I had to do that. And so I didn't.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like a different kind of scarlet letter.
yeah, totally. So I do that. And I think that's helped me a lot. Documenting everything, even my emotions, even the ugliness.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing, my kids will point out they'll see my blind side. They'll be able to be like, "Oh, mom, we see this," and I'll be like, you know, but I'll also be like, "Okay, like you're right." I am avoiding maybe by doing. It's such a journey. And I really think that's what life is. Life is a journey. We're not ever going to get to the other side until we're dead.
Right.
So if we just, it's always being aware. I know for me, just awareness is really key. When I'm feeling a certain way, when whatever I'm doing, or if I'm hearing something or watching something, I was thinking about being sensitive, and because I've always been a very sensitive person, and it used to be a negative. Oh, you're so sensitive, and I realized that's actually my superpower.
Right.
My sensitivity is my superpower,
Right.
but also with a superpower, there's the kryptonite,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So it's being aware of what's your kryptonite.
Mm. So, as a fellow sensitive person, what is your kryptonite?
Trying to fix.
Mm.
Yeah. Instead of my superpower being I'm sensitive to what's going on with others in my home or outside of my home, I'm thinking, well, if you did this,
Mm-hmm.
so I can see your emotion, I can feel your sadness, I can see what I think would help you, but that's not always what somebody wants to hear.
Right.
And so I've learned, like some people I can say things to, especially if I have a client,
Right.
right? If I'm working with a client, I can say, I see this.
Right.
I can also ask, is that something you would want me to? Do you want me to tell you what I'm seeing? Um, but in my home, not so much, right?
Right.
Because like let them figure it out. But I'm like, but I
Yeah.
see this. And this would be
Yeah.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that is definitely.
That's funny because the flip side of that coin, I think is the overly critical or criticizing. Because being as sensitive as I am, which typically is going to mean I'm incredibly self-critical,
Mm,
incredibly. And if I am in a mind pattern of feeling like let's say I have uh, a few losses in a row. Like, oh, I'm trying to do this, it didn't go according to plan, or it didn't get executed how I fully anticipated. I'm gonna, it's gonna ramp up that internal self-critical voice. But then you throw in if you throw in an external critical voice,
mm,
that is what just kickstarts that spiral. And then the self-critical voice says, "See, I told you, you are a piece of shit."
hmm
See, I told you,
hmm
you are a failure. See, I told you, like it then justifies that self-critical nature that in a healthy voice is saying, "Hey, you can do better." But when it becomes unhealthy, it then says you are no good.
mm,
And that is the the burden of being a sensitive empath that when if my internal voice is overwhelming me, there's no way I'm going to be able to hear the external voices and needs of others.
Yeah.
So then how have you kept that internal chatter healthy?
Uh,
And not that does not mean it is always healthy, because there are going to be times where our internal chatter sometimes has to be told, "Hey, shut up." Like I get it. But what have you found helps you keep that internal chatter healthy in this process? Because I got to imagine that, kind of just based on what you've shared in the first conversation and this one, is grief can very easily turn to um, self-loathing and self-hatred,
mm,
blame,
mm,
and emotions and feelings on that side of the spectrum. And not saying that those have not come up in the process, because those are 100% going to come up in the grieving process. You're going to have the internal blame, you're going to have the external blame and victimization. You're going to have all the finger pointing, and at some point all the fingers are be pointing back at you, and it's going to go in and out of that. Through all that, has there been a for lack of better terms, a golden thread that has helped you stay close to that healthy internal dialogue, close to that internal verbalization that's helped you through the grieving process, given the methods and things you've already shared? Is there other things with, like, do you like silence? Do you no, let's be honest, no one really likes silence. Um, but is that a valuable tool? Um, or what other things have helped that internal dialogue be healthy and allow you to hear the voice of the divine in the process? Because that's the other factors, is grief as a way of shouting louder than the whisper of the divine.
yeah, for
So
sure.
then, what things have you done that have allowed you to hear the whisper, to hear the sweet, calm, still voice of the Father in the cacophony of grief?
It's interesting that you say, you're really critical on yourself, because I think if you are a sensitive person, you're definitely critical of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, very critical of how, I started grieving, and like, am I doing it right? And I do think that we all tend to judge ourselves on our journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got to be, just like I was saying, that client was like, like, what am I doing wrong? And what I believe has helped me is, I will say this: is that serving you, Gina, right now? Is that thought serving you?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can spiral and think all the things, but I'll be like, I mean, let's just say one thought: you're alone. You don't have, you're all alone. You got to figure it out on your own. I can spiral in that.
Yeah.
Or I can be like, okay, that's not serving you right now.
And it's funny because that is rooted in a kernel of truth,
Hmm.
but slightly off
Hmm.
axis.
Because we were created for partnership,
Right.
right? God created us first to partner with Him, and then He gave us a mate,
Mm-hmm.
and now we have this partnership, and then that mate is taken, and now you're left, and you feel, and again, you feel alone, because you notice everybody's going on with their lives, everybody's doing their thing, and
Right.
life is going on for others, where for me, and maybe for my kids too, life seems like it's halted.
Mm.
So whenever I'm starting to spiral, that's typically what I'll say. Like, is that thought serving you right now, Gina?
Mm.
And maybe I need to get up. Maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to go sit out on the porch. Maybe I need to, for me, what helps me is communing in nature,
Hmm.
going for a hike, going
Yep.
for a walk,
And I
going along
love that
the river.
you're always posting your
Yeah.
walks and that you're taking it with your
Yeah.
kids, with Judah, with the dog. Like you're always walking.
I love
Um,
it. It's been helpful.
and is that because obviously there's the physiological benefits of the walk, but what is that doing for your mind and your emotions in that? Is it a is it the change of the environment that kind of snaps you out of whatever it is? Is it a or does it help bring clarity to the mind and thoughts and emotions, or what happens on those walks for you?
I think a lot because you start focusing on your breath.
Mm, okay.
You start focusing on what's around you instead of your circumstance. Because you know what? Come on. How long can you sit in your circumstance and just be like,
It's too
or
much.
if you get out of it and you're stepping out and you're going on a walk or you're, doing something different, making bread. I love, like baking or cooking or whatever, right? I joke to my kids, I like washing dishes because it's when I'm thinking. I'm doing
Mm,
something and I'm thinking and I'm
right.
cleaning it and I'm doing because they're like, geez, do you really like doing dishes that much?
Right.
Like maybe because of the warmth of the water and the soap and like cleaning everything and putting it's kind of like a cathartic, like I'm
Yeah.
cleaning out the thoughts and they're
Yeah.
coming out.
I
Um,
I feel like I read or heard somewhere that in for lack of better terms, ancient times, when soldiers would get back from military campaigns, they would actually have them just do manual repetitive labor while talking about what they experienced.
Interesting.
Because there's something about that repetitive, it gives your body something physical to do, but then eventually your mind starts to wander and freeze up. Like with dishes, like it's a pretty repetitive task. You can almost turn your brain off and do dishes or vacuum or whatever else it might be. But then what that does is it turns off one part of your brain, but allows the other part of your brain to then start thinking and processing stuff. And so that totally aligns with the. It's almost like you're distracting the reptilian part of your brain with a task, so that the soul part of your brain can finally start to think and process. So the fight or flight gets turned off, and the
Hmm.
emotion gets turned on.
Totally.
What what kind of thoughts and things are you able to process when you get in those into task mode? Like does that actually offer you has that offered you freedom in some of those emotions and those emotional spiritual breakthroughs, or is it more of a reprieve from the bombardment of feelings and emotions?
For me, I think it's just I find that when I step out of the circumstance and I'm going into either a walk or doing the dishes or whatever, it's like I'm able to talk to myself and be like, we're going to be okay.
Mm,
Like, and I start like, especially if I'm out in nature, like, oh my gosh, look how beautiful that is, or this. And it's like just not that it distracts me, like I'm not thinking about the issue, but it more
uh-huh.
like I feel more connected to myself.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is when we're in those heightened emotional states, there tends to be a disconnect from body.
Hmm.
And so having that thing that engages the other senses helps re-anchor us into
Yep.
wholeness. There's times when whether with my own clients or when I'm sitting with my personal spiritual director, he'll be like, "Hey man, just take a moment and feel your body without touching it." So like
Hmm.
I'll then start shifting my mind to like I'm feeling my hands and fingertips without touching my fingertips. So you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to draw that attention to re-anchor in this meat suit
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to get very like our soul, mind, and body can be disconnected. And when that happens, that's when the misalignment happens. That's when the spiral happens. The panic starts. And I think that sitting in the grief with the grief while tasking, that doesn't, it's not a doing to distract. It helps reconnect all those
Agreed.
bits of our that want to be wrenched away,
Mm.
along with the missing, along with the no longer, along with the
Loneliness.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because those have a pretty strong pull. So then, knowing what you know now, how can I, or anyone else that's watching or listening to this, how can we strengthen a resilience for grief? And I know that there's going to be nothing can really prepare you flat out. You can never be fully prepared for whatever rapid is going to you're going to run, you know, knowingly or unknowingly find yourself in. But knowing what you know now, and not in a I wish I would have angle. That's not what I'm getting at. But knowing what you know now, how can we strengthen our resolve for grief? And I love some of the things that you've already said, and I think those all kind of factor into it. Of actually feeling the emotion, sitting in it. That could be an exercise of sitting and feeling the emotions that we have in the quote unquote downtime. But what other things, if any, would you recommend would help us not just survive the grief in the morning, but to move? Oh, that's what it was. We the moving with it. How do we strengthen and stretch so that we are able to move with the grief and mourning in whatever direction it goes, whatever way it tries to contort our bodies? How do we prepare ourselves?
Well, you said something that just like popped in my mind, like you can't prepare yourself for the rapids unless you go ahead and but how do you do that?
Right,
You can't go ahead.
right.
You can only go through it. You can only go with the current,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, you know, grief doesn't it's not like trying to get over it. It's like learning, maybe leaning into the reality of it,
Mm-hmm.
giving yourself permission to do it. You don't have to be strong. There's no superheroes here. Not like I did it the best way, and you should follow the way I did it.
Oh, yeah.
um,
Which is
yeah,
pretty dominant in today's uh culture
exactly.
because
Hmm.
everyone's an
If
expert
you
in it.
want my if you want my tips on how to grieve,
Right.
um, you know, join my course.
Yep.
I will say there are things that I do want to like build courses around, like grief brain. I want to build
Mm-hmm.
courses around allowing yourself to feel. Also choosing. So I think something you said is like, you know, how do you find resolve? The resilience in you is like you choose to believe that you do have resilience.
Mm.
You can see years earlier things you got through, and you're like, I got through that. Like, I never thought I was going to get through that. And I got
Mm.
through that. So each time you get to a place and you're like, damn, I'm a pretty strong person. I think I've shared this before. I've always been a scaredy cat. I mean, I'm the kind of person, even still, the lights are off and I run up the stairs, right? Like something. I would say I'm more scared of things that are not reality, versus, like I'll say something, to one of my kids, especially Chad, and I'll be like, well, I don't want to go kayaking by myself because, there could be someone in the thing. And he's like, well, you've watched way too many
Yeah.
scary things, Mom. But I do think if you just choose to believe you have resilience, you're choosing to get up every day. I'm making that choice. I'm
Mm,
choosing to let other people love on me. I'm choosing to be vulnerable. Choosing to talk about Lou and allowing that memory to come in, even if it hurts. And also, I'm choosing to keep saying, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm still standing.
mm,
And I think resilience is also rooted in hope.
mm,
So, you can focus on the circumstance. I'm a widow. I'm alone. My finances were cut in half. I could think of a billion things that I could say is truth and law. Like, you go to court, it's a circumstance. Like, this is why you're here in court. My circumstance can be proven by law that I am a widow, that I have lost this, and that I have, wherever my circumstance is.
mhm,
But it's not rooted in that.
mm.
It's rooted in hope. I am choosing to see that. And some days, I actually can say, I'm going to take that off. I'm going to feel sad today. Um, and you know what? That's okay too.
Mm,
Yeah, like I said, I think if you focus on the getting through, I got to get to the other side and it's going to be better out over there,
mm,
you're going to miss so much. I think hope whispers to us.
mm.
Um, and we just have to be quiet enough to hear it. I think it's interesting that I remember the scripture about Elijah being in the mountain and, you know, it wasn't like a rushing wind that came to him. It was like a quietness. And I think God wants us to lean into that, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God. Um, I will say this. I saw my husband's breath being taken from him. He did not take his last breath. So something took it.
Mm.
Like visibly, I watched it. And that has really stayed with me. That I can focus on hope of seeing him again. And I'm really happy about it. I'd like to see him like over there, bugging the crap out of me. But maybe he's gonna bug the crap out of me from having to.
Yeah. First thing he's gonna say to you is, "What took you so long?"
Or want to see the friends I made. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he's going to say. Okay, so me and Paul, we've been,
Oh
I've been talking his ear off.
man, and I think that's the really hard thing is we have such it seems that we have such an aversion to silence. I know I'm wired to be averse to silence because it's in the silence that my internal critical chatter starts.
Mm,
That's like the rushing wind, the earthquake, the different other things that happen on the mountain. And if I can outweight those, the silence comes. And it's in the silence, like you said, it's God was in the silence. He was in the stillness. But to go through that work, to not even just necessary to even go through that work, but to accept and love that part of me as well. That's the thing
Yeah.
that's really hard is seeing, acknowledging, and loving the good and bad, the positive and negative, the loss and the gain, the joy and the sorrow. It's hard to love all the parts.
But that's a choice too. I think that is really key, is that if I was to say to anybody, like, well, you got a lot of ugly parts, so you got a lot to work through. Or you can be like, yeah, there's parts, like I said, superpower, kryptonite.
Right.
I can look at the kryptonite as it's bigger,
Mm.
or I can look at it as I'm aware that it's there. I'm aware that there are things that I don't really like, but I can also be like, oof, yeah, but I got all of this. And that's a choice. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people down, is they're choosing to look at all the ugly parts and being like, I'm so screwed up, like how can, I can't be any earthly good for anybody,
Right.
instead of God's like, geez,
So if what has helped snap you out of that spiral, when you get to the point where all you see is the negative, all you see is the loss, because those moments happen in all of us. What helps realign you? What helps snap you out of it?
I take a nap. I'm just kidding.
Well, what was that meme that was going around for a little bit when so maybe it's Elijah, I can't remember, but he was like, God this and God that, and then God basically told him, hey, eat a big dinner and take a nap. Was basically the solution. And then he
I
woke up
mean,
and yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes you just gotta eat a big meal and take a nap.
Sometimes I'm gonna just like, I'm gonna take a nap. I'm gonna lay down because you're being really hard on yourself. Like, geez, simmer down. I went and got my hair done the other day, and I said to the girl, we were talking about the world and, all this stuff, and sweet, sweet girl. And I said, sometimes I just want to go on social media and just go, simmer down.
Yeah,
Everybody just simmer.
yeah,
Just simmer down.
yeah. Simmer down now.
So, yeah, simmer down. So sometimes I have to say that to me. Simmer down,
Mm.
Gina. Simmer down.
So that would maybe be the the last little bit is it kind of goes back to what you said earlier is hey, just take it easy on yourself. You're gonna feel what you're gonna feel.
Feel it.
Feel it. And it's kind of what I've told our kids when they got to the age of understanding. It's like what you feel is not wrong. What you do with that feeling may be wrong.
Hmm.
Like you can feel whatever way you want to feel. It's the action that comes after the feeling that's
Hmm.
either going to be a problem or not be a problem. And so you have a choice with how you act. You don't always have a choice with how you feel.
Exactly.
Very rarely do we have a choice of how we feel. But the way we act can influence our feelings. I don't like
Pretty
that though.
good advice.
Yeah, I should probably take it.
Write that on a bumper sticker.
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's true and we know it. We just don't want to we like excuses. We like baked in excuses that help us blame someone other than ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I learned big time is that when you realize you're at cause for whatever's happening in your life, when
Mm,
you're at cause for it, meaning like you're responsible, you respond differently
yeah.
because it becomes a responsibility.
Right.
Your responsibility is to, see what you're doing, know that emotional intelligence, like, okay, I flipped out, I freaked out, like, or whatever it is, just like you're telling your kids, we have to tell ourselves,
Yeah.
you know, it really is good to, be aware and choose intentional, and then take a nap and eat a big meal.
When in doubt, take a nap.
It works. It's kind of
It
like
works.
turning on and off your computer when it doesn't work. You're like, I've tried everything. I'm just going to turn it off, shut it down, and turn it back on. And sometimes we need to be that.
Yeah,
We're the hard
exactly.
drive,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Exactly. Oh, Gina, that's within this other conversation that we've just had. There's so many things that I wrote down that now I have to deal with. um, that now it's like you said, like now that I know, I am now responsible. It's one of those things that without the knowing, there's almost a lack of accountability and responsibility. But once you know, you gotta do something with it.
Yep.
And you've now given me things that now I know and can no longer say, well, I didn't know. Because now I know, and now I need to do something with it. Now I've got some work to do to sit with the things that I've been avoiding. And that's kind of the mode I've recognized I've been in for at least since the beginning of the year. Maybe a little bit prior to. Not been the biggest fan of the journey.
Mm.
I'm like, can I just get to whatever this is? Whatever this current end state is, let's just get to that. And for a myriad of reasons. But the things that I've been hearing in this conversation are the biggest thing, I think, is I don't need to necessarily have the answers or the solution, but I'm capable and it's gonna be okay. Might not feel
Yeah.
like it, but it's gonna be okay. I am going to be okay.
Yeah. And if we could, you know, put that on a bumper sticker, it'd probably make a lot of money. I am going to be okay.
Yeah.
I will be okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I think the biggest thing to walk away with is being aware,
Mm.
knowing you have resilience,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you're at cause for the emotions or whatever, being okay with that, and being really kind to yourself. No
Mm-hmm.
judgment, because
Yeah.
scripture says, there's no condemnation in Christ. So why are we constantly condemning ourselves?
Right. Yeah,
It's
well,
annoying.
a friend of mine last night, we have an ongoing dialogue. I'm going to have him on soon, hopefully. Again, I had a conversation with him before. But uh, he's like, hey, it's kind of hard to love your neighbor when you don't love yourself.
I say that all the time.
He's like, the command is love your neighbor as you're going through the process of loving yourself. Like, it's not love your neighbor in the way you love yourself,
Hmm.
because some
Hmm.
people, that's not a good way to love how some people love themselves. It's no, as you're working out your ability and capacity to love self, give that to the person next to you as well. And that is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I remember being in, this wasn't that long ago. I was visiting some friends and we were in a sermon. The sermon, the guy was like talking about, like, he was literally talking about shame. And he's like, you know, all the scripture. And it was like, and I do kind of like when I hear something, I go, oh, okay, boom. Don't think that, whatever, that makes sense. And we
Right.
got out, and the one person that was with us, he was like, well, it's really a process. And I was like, but he said that Jesus said this. And I
Yeah.
was like, so interesting. We love living in our own agony.
Sometimes, yeah.
And then we blame everyone else. Well, you don't know. You just don't know. And I'm like, well, I think I do, because
That's so
Jesus said
funny
that.
because huh, that brings up a really interesting thing that maybe we'll get into next time we have a conversation. But the thought of the process we find ourselves in, we don't like when we need it. but then we're willing to sit in the process when we're trying to do something we don't want to do.
Hmm.
We're willing to sit and wait, like, oh, it's a process, because we're avoiding the doing. But when you want to get through something because we don't like what we're needing to do, we're like, this process needs to hurry up. We want to get to the end state as quickly as possible. It's funny how that how we do that to ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, think about when you go on a trip, you're like going to Hawaii. You want to bypass going through security, getting your luggage, paying the $25 fee, getting on the plane, finding a seat, getting there. You just want to be in Hawaii.
Right.
But unless you're different than me, I
Right.
can't fly by
Right.
myself. We have to go through there. We have to go through
Yes.
the the whole scenario there,
Yep. All the steps.
all the steps.
Gina, this was again another awesome conversation, and the it's like I said, it's been a beautiful thing for me to be a witness to the process for you and your family, as well as knowing just with the conversations that we've had offline and the text messages and everything to see how this process is allowing you to help other people. It's one of those things that unfortunately sometimes the only way to uncover a capacity that is within us is through life situations like you've experienced. And I
Yeah.
wish it wasn't the case. I wish that the capacity was there, was known, because it's there. I just wish it was known without the sorrow. I wish it was there without the situation. Because you've always had this heart that you have. It's just now it's focused in a different direction. You've had a heart and a love for people and connecting people to the divine for as long as I've known you. And this current season of how that plays out in the real world is in a depth and intensity that is going to have a very significant impact in people's lives.
Well, thank you,
If
man.
if you thought if you thought that the pinnacle of your involvement in the story of the divine was your musical ability, just you wait. Mom, you are going to change lives. And not just for your kids in Judah. People are going to meet the divine through you. I love you too. And um, when that bestseller is done being written, I wanted to hear all about it.
Okay.
Okay. I love you.
Love you
And
too.
and we will 100% have another conversation later.
Sounds great.
All right. Love you, Mama.
Okay. Love you too, honey.